This is something that I have done in the past, and there'll be some purists scowling at me, but there's a genuine reason why I do this. So this closing piece here, that normally boxes in the top of the sill and the back of the wheel arch extension, is a notorious rot spot on these things. You often find these panels have completely disappeared. So I've got a gap underneath this one, that any water that's going to go in and splash against this is going to drip down. Okay, I've used a bit of the old checker plate off the Ghost train, put lots of wax around it, screwed it in. It's sitting away from the steel, so we're unlikely to get a reaction between the steel and the aluminium. But also, because it's screwed in, you get the opportunity to remove the 3 screws, wax the chassis if you need to at some point in the distant future. And similarly, I've bolted the closing panel on here. Now, on other cars that I've seen, I had a conversation with Paul at ABE, Atkinson's Bespoke Engineering, the other day. He reckons these were all welded on, which they were. Everyone I've seen has been welded onto the driver's side, the right-hand side, but they've all been bolted onto the passenger left-hand side. That's largely because the pump sits on top of the chassis, on top of here, on top of the outrigger. And Paul's saying, no, they never sat there, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, I'm open to opinions on this, but at the end of the day, this is not a concourse restoration. This is something where the customer really wants this thing to be rot-free as it possibly can be, but also that we can maintain the thing moving forwards. And that, to me, seems like a valuable compromise there. Now, you could use anything you like. You can put a piece of old milk bottle in there, because really all you're trying to do is to stop any crap that's going underneath the car from firing up and bouncing off the outside, or so the inside edge of the fragile wings. Now, while we're on wings, because that's the next thing I'm going to put on, you can see the sidey sliders and everything are all in. I've got to do the channel on the inside. One area the wings consistently will rot out on is, just carefully lean this against L95, it's in an arc. So you can see the arc around the wheel arch. Yeah, more or less exactly the same distance all the way around, and they all rot. And it's because of the rubber seal on here, because of the rubber seal on there. Now, what I generally do, I mean, the customer wants the patina on this thing, wants it retaining. So what I've done, scrape the old under seal off. I'll give this a rattle of etch primer. When that's gone off, I shall stick the Dynamat stuff over the top of it. It could be anything you like, as long as it sticks like shit to a blanket. And the real thing is, I just want a line of it, because you can see here, even though I scraped it off, you can still see the line where that arch goes, okay? It's actually eaten into the Bermaprite over the years. So by putting the Dynamat on there, we're going to give it a little bit more time to have a think about it before it wears right the way through. And then the other thing I'm going to do on this thing, before it goes back into the car, I'll lose any of the loose underseal that's on the underside here. I'll clean up these edges here, and I'll just waft wax over the exposed Bermaprite areas and get that looking a bit tidier. But that's that really. And I've got all of the rear light clusters, which I've painted the concealed faces, just brush painted with the satin black that I used on the pillars, just to give it a bit of a kind of matching look, really. The whole car's going into a body shop when I've finished with it. I'm not quite sure. John, I think John's still unresolved. John, the owner, this is. Hello, John. Is still unresolved on whether the car will be painted or not. He's still very much set on the patina look. And you know, I can see that. I can see it working. But I'm keen to get this wing on. So the next thing I'm going to do, really, like I said, is just tidy this all up, etch prime, and then yeah, get it on, so to speak. For now, all the loose underseal now, apart from that is tight there. All of the loose underseal has now been removed. Went over it with a zip wheel, which is around somewhere. Anyway, it doesn't matter about that. Here now I put some etch prime on it. You can clearly see the arc. Yeah. It's even cut in down here, cut in to the Burma Bright. So all I really do now, strips of Burma Bright Dynamat, strips of Dynamat, really to go around that arc. I'm not going to Dynamat the entire panel, that would be ridiculous, waste of Dynamat. And then wax over any of the grey areas, put it on, I think, yeah. Well, that's on and in place, looks good. Panel gaps looking good, wing lines up nicely. The only challenge I've got here, and this is one you guys might not have realised, but kind of I did already. The profile on the later 4-door rear kind of light clusters is different to that of the 2-door wing. You can see this is a much softer crease here than that one, which results in a little bit of a bump there. Now, this one is from a 2-door, that one's from a 4-door. That came up all right though, pleased with that for a brush paint. Right, then what I've been doing around here, put the arch extension in. I had to weld, I've forgotten to do this, weld in the closing piece on the bottom of the B pillar. So I'll just put some paint over the top of that, then I can put the pump, can go back in. I'll get that fitted, and then closing piece, outer wing, leaping forwards. So yeah, primer first. Starting to look like a Range Rover. Okie dokie, been over this loom. So what I've really done here is I've taken all of the horrible connectors off. I've replaced all the connectors. Now, the way the loom works, the signal comes down this side, goes into here. For things like side lights, it then goes back out and across this side when it goes to the other side. I need another feed off here as well, going to number plates. And then you've got left indicator, right indicator, reverse lights and brake lights. And all I've really done, just as an aid memoir, is I've reminded myself side lights are red, brake is green purple, reverse green brown. It starts to get tricky. Left hand indicator is green red. It's actually just light green red, but I think it's green red. And then we've got right hand indicator green white. That's dead easy, you can spot that out from the rest of them. And trailer is light green purple, which is over here somewhere. And then on the fuel gauge, which is this chunk of wiring here, the white green is the low fuel warning lights. The gauge is the green and black, which is grubby at the moment, but it is green and black, I can assure you. And then there's an earth wire there. And then I started unpicking it all because I was a bit suspicious about bits like that. It's recoverable. Another lump there, you see. I think they're basically where someone's been a little bit too keen with the grinder and not been that careful of the loom. So it's not a melted wire, it's just been a little bit kind of like, you know, some gibbon has been near it. Let's put it that way. It's probably the politest way of putting it. So what I'm going to do here is really just cut where the insulation's gone, butt splice, because I want to make sure that none of the strands, I mean, obviously if they've gone through half the strands, then you've got higher resistance going through the remaining strands, and it's the wires operating below spec. So that's the reason I do that. The remainder of this loom is actually in really good order. So it needs binding up again, and then feeding through. So really all I've done is I've taken it from pretty much the point where the grommet would go through the side panel here, and really just stripped everything back, laid it all out, got a rough idea about what it is I want to do, double check the continuity. Now, the reason I was huffing and puffing about green purple, green brown, green red is they're very fucking similar, aren't they? In fact, that might be green purple. I've connected the green purple and the green red, folks. That's not ideal, is it? There you go. So lesson 1, and that one is green purple. Is that green purple or is that green red? See, that to me looks green purple. So another reason why I started stripping the insulation back is these exposed ends that have dealt with all of the road crap and everything aren't going to be as clear to see as these ends up here. So that is definitely a green purple. I can see that a mile off. Okay, so all I need to do now is trace that wire back down to the end and be absolutely sure that I've got green purple in the correct location. And then, because the colours have faded on these bits of wires which weren't covered up with insulating tape, I can then relabel everything up. Okay, that's my top trick there. Just saves you getting things wrong, because otherwise when you plug all the connectors and everything and you get the lights in, you'll find that when you press the brake, the indicators go on, etc. So that's all I can suggest there. And for some reason, the green, purple, green, brown, green, red, they all look exactly the bloody same, as I've just demonstrated. But when you dig in a little bit further up the loom, they don't look exactly the same, as I demonstrated. And then the only other thing I'm going to do here, so all of these wires then had an individual earth, which went to the back of the crossmember down here somewhere. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to create a local earth. So I'll create an earth here, an earth over there. And what an earth, and then there'll be an earth for the fuel tank and the number plate lights. I think that's going to be the easiest way of doing this, because otherwise you just end up with all of this shit wire. Earth wires are the ones that seem to suffer the most. When you peel these things back, you often find, in fact, look at that one, that's a beauty that is, that's almost completely severed. That's why I chopped it off. But the earth wires tend to suffer when the resistance goes a bit high. More so than the other wires, so I tend to replace them. We'll soon have this back in tip-top shape, tell you now. Putting the final touches underneath the boot floor before the boot floor goes in. So you can see I've been going around painting odds and sods and really painting any of the shut faces where the boot floor is going to sit. I have made up a number of brackets for the cross members. So you can see the cross member there, the brake line is going through. Found some original used old stock brackets, which I cleaned, prepped, painted, chassis paint, made up some captive plates using some very thick steel, welding nuts on, they'll fit. Bless me. Oh, that's awkward. And then I thought, well, I better put this Bose unit back on. So already done all the ball joints, so strapped the top ball joint back onto the Bose unit, and obviously don't forget the gaiters, and then attached the Bose unit to the bottom ball joint, and then comes the challenge of getting the Bose unit to actually line up with the fixings on the cross member. And the only way you can do that is by jacking the back end of the chassis up 1.5 foot, so you can see it. Drags to look, and so yes, so that's gone through. The massive balls up from my perspective was I didn't put the bolts back into the cross member before I put the heel board in, so I've had to take the heel board out again. Gibbon. So if you are working on the heel board and you take the Bose self-leveling bolts out for any reason, put them back in before the heel board. Otherwise, they won't go in. Oh, that's all right, Richard, you're saying. Put them in the other way round. Yeah, I thought that too. Put them in the other way round, you can bodge it properly. The ones at the bottom will be a little bit, for now, will be a little bit of a faff because they've got to go round the body of the Bose unit. But then, next time someone wants to take the Bose unit out, they've got to take the boot floor out, and they ain't going to thank you for it. So I figured, do you know what, for the sake of half an hour getting that heel board out and putting it back in again, let's do it properly. That's exactly what I did. Right, so I'm going to tighten those 4 nuts up. You see I've already got my 9/16 spanner on there. Tighten those up, get the car back down again. I've been putting things like the fuel filler pipes and so forth in. There's a lump of pipe down there as well, look at that. Fuel filler pipe and everything's been going in. Pump is over there. Now what I'm going to do for the pump electrics, I'm going to run it straight through the heel board here and then under the carpet down the transmission tunnel to the back of the fuse board. It's got to be a better idea than running it underneath the car, really, I think. I don't know. Answers on a postcard. I'm going to run it down the inside of the car. Just for shits and giggles. We're not talking about a kind of concourse original project here. We're talking about a usable vehicle. And then I've really been going around securing things like the brake line to the top of the chassis member there, and the fuel line. It's a bit on the high side at the moment because we're still jacked up in the air, but the fuel line I've also attached onto the top of the chassis rail here. So that's all nicely secure. Just use P-clips. Are they P-clips? They're not P-clips. Saddle clips, I think they're called. You get them for different sizes of pipe. Right, and then, yeah, boot flooring, I think we're pretty much there. Connected up all of the wires to the fuel tank. On the sender, by the way, one of them has a WL designation and the other one has some other designation, and I'm assuming WL is warning light, so that'll be the white and green. Well, we'll go to that one. The centre one is an earth one. If they're the wrong way round, I should be able to sort that out when I get to it. But really, once this is all done, then I should be able to connect up all the fuel lines and actually run the car up from fuel in the fuel tank, which is going to be vastly preferable to having it slopping around all over the place out of jerry cans. Right, and the other thing I did, John, I did de-rust those 3 ribs across the roof, and I did paint them. All right. Right, so doing these nuts up, then I can lower the car back down again. And then we're probably not that far off getting the seats in. Sunday of the bank holiday Whitsun weekend, and I'm in the workshop. Yeah, so what have I been doing in here? Really just prepping everything up for this boot floor to go in. So this is the boot floor which came from Machine Ore. I'll put the link in the description below. Yeah, thoroughly good product. Buy it direct from the manufacturer, and there you go. I've also freed up a number of these fixings up here, and these hold the grab handles, fuck handles, whatever you want to call them. The fixings up there had corroded in. So I've cleaned all those out, cleaned all the rust up on the roof area. The main objective here is really to get this thing back together, but I want to get the seats out of my car and back in here again. So this is all moving in that general direction. Now, I started to put this brand spanking new boot floor in, which is a thing of beauty. It really is. Started to put it in. I drilled the holes for the seatbelt mountings. I've also bolted these cross members into place. I've not put the supports underneath yet, but I've just bolted the cross members in. Little infliction on the end. I hate it when people do that. Right, now, sorry, digression. So then I was looking over the seatbelt mountings. Now, these are actually quite difficult to get hold of, and they consist of 3 parts. So there's a pivot. That thread is what goes down through the chassis. It goes that way up. This bit is what fixes onto the floor. You can see there's a couple of holes there for pop rivets and one centre hole for the bolt. Now, these were absolutely seized solid. So I've managed to get them all apart. A lot of heat on there, tapping it as I'm heating it, and then used bloody great drift, that chappy there. What's that? That's a 9.5mm drift on the vise, banging the clevis pin through, and it came out. Nice, eh? And I'm now just in the process really of cleaning everything up. So all I really do here, these are a 7/16 NF thread. There's one that's been cleaned. This will all get lubed up and everything before it goes back together. But I want to get these cleaned up and on the floor before I put the floor in. As you can see, there's quite a lot of shite on them. So let's get the tripod out. I've done a lot of tripod work recently, so let's bore you silly with tripod work. So quick tidy up. I need to remake a pair of these as well. These hold the D-post covers, the external covers on the outside. You can see one is good, one is rotted out. So I'm going to make a pair of new ones. These are the seat supports, which I'm just waiting for the fixings to arrive. And this is my paint scraper. Now, really, I'm just scraping all the old rubbish off. There's quite a lot of very old underseal on here, but underneath it's looking pretty rot free. So I think at long last this car might have stopped fighting me. That's not an ASMR friendly noise though, is it? No. Right, now, like I say, there's a pair of pop rivets there, so we'll see if we can punch those through. That's my 7/16 NF. Brain's not working. Tap. Die, moron. Right, now let's get... Dale donated these to me. Thank you, Dale. I get lots of people donate odds and bits to me, which I'm very grateful. Right, that's done that. That was just really just shit in there. Because basically what happens is this will pop rivet onto the base of the floor, but I want this painted before it goes on. So that pop rivet's onto the floor, and then this dangles underneath it and goes through the chassis. And then the bolt for the seatbelt will go through there, and that's going to be probably 7/16 as well. I think it might just be, so we might have to get the 7/16 tap out. 7/16 NF, let's see if that goes in there. Just thinking about it. Again, using my prehistoric Talco Japan socket set, tap and die set. You're talking nonsense today. Well, it's a Sunday, I've not even started drinking yet. Right, that is thinking about going in there. It might not be. It is. Just wanted to catch the top thread, and then that can wind through there. I haven't got any. I've got some seatbelt bolts somewhere, but that goes through. I'm not cutting any metal. It's literally just chasing the thread. Because even my puny arms couldn't do this. Right, now that goes in there. So I was rather hoping to be able to fit the floor today, but I don't think that's going to be practical, because by the time these are painted and fitted to the floor, I'm going to run out of time. So I can fit the seats at least. You can see there's quite a lot of shite in that thread, which is now clean. And that, although it wouldn't normally go in there, which is also a 7/16 NF thread, and that's a dirty one because I've not actually cleaned that one up yet. This one I've chased. That goes in there beautifully. Okay, so that's the seatbelt mounting. Now I will continue with just cleaning these out. I think most of what's on the inside here is relatively good. I mean, they're not bad. These, I've seen these so bad, and these, it used to drive my brother up the wall, was the noise of me dragging my metal spade down the pavement when we went to the seaside as kids. It used to drive him insane, so perhaps I won't subject you to that. If anything, I mean, he knew how to press my buttons as well. He knew exactly what to do to get me into trouble. And it didn't take a lot of persuasion either. I'm using my very, very, very fine ruler there, but I might actually just get in there with the wire brush. There it is. You mount it in the vise. Otherwise, we're going to end up taking more lumps out of our stuff. That was the ghost train. That was the rear light fixing. That was the ghost train. Really ought to be more careful, Richard. So I treat these to a rust treatment first and foremost, and then once they've had that, then they can be painted. A little bowl of water over here, but it's because when I heated these things up to extract them, they were a bit on the warm side. Yeah, so I kind of had to just dunk it into water. Now the other thing that I did notice on this is this clevis pin is a bit on the tight side. So let's see if we can clean the pin up. I'm not going to paint the pin, folks, because that's just silly. What's the point of having a tight clevis pin and then sticking 9 microns of paint on the top of it? Because it ain't going to fit again. So it will go in there. What will happen is it'll obviously all get lubed up before. There we go. It goes in. It'll all get lubed up before I've finished. Now that would then go in there. A bloody great big washer on the outside there, and a split pin. And then, of course, we would need a 7/16 NF nut with a big washer. So I've probably got a 7/16 big washer here. Probably that's something like that, I would have thought. I'll see. I'll have to check the parts manual to find out, because obviously there's a rubber bush on the chassis which goes around the shaft and then it pulls against it. So that's one ready for derusting. Let's get all of that tidied away and let's do the next one. So, chasing thread first and foremost. Now the shaft on this one does look a bit shit, so before we go too berserk with this, let's just check it's not corroded. No, it's where it's been gripped in a vice. It's been cast. I think it's cast iron. It looks very similar to that one as far as the diameter is concerned. So I think it'll be all right. We'll need to, let's do the thread first, then I can put the tap and die set away. What have I done with the die? Put it down there. Not ideal, folks, but let's mount it in here. Take these off. What is that one in there? That's not the right size. Chunter, chunter, chunter. It's a bit shitty, this tap holder, sorry, die holder. But it does the job. In and that, and mount that in there. Let's see if we can chase this thread. Just thinking about going on the end. Might have to start it by hand. I don't want it to go on crossed. There we are, that's definitely on. Looks like it's on anyway. Let's give it a turn and see what happens. It's just the first turn of thread. It's a bit on the tight side. So again, what we've got coming down here, if you can see that, just about, maybe in a bit closer. There's rust coming down here as I'm chasing the thread. I'm not cutting metal because there's nothing shiny on there, but I am cutting through rust. Just put some lube on that. Going down nicely. There. Almost there. And all we're really doing, chaining the thread up. It's more effective than using a wire brush, because we're effectively chasing any rust that's in those threads out. That is more or less there. So I'll wind this off now. Squeak, 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 squeak. Coming off. Warm today, 20 something degrees. Going out for a barbecue in a minute. So I want to get this done. Ouch. There we go. Easy, and then all that shite that come off it. It's nice and warm as well. That's tidy. Right, next, let's clean this chappy up so you can move back a bit, give me a bit more bench space. That can go away. I could use the wire brush to clean this thing up, but it's just going to spread this stuff all over the bloody workshop. And it's brittle, old, underseal. Ran out of power. Get the worst of it off. Yuck. Shitty stuff. Right, let's clean the rest of that out in the vise. Inside. Hey, Mr. Gravity. Chase this thread through while we're here as well. I'll do that. Old underseal. Next thread. I'll just clean that off first and foremost. Basically, the escape channels for the shite are all bunged up, so I clean those out with one of the donated toothbrushes. Thank you, James. Plenty of crap coming out of there. And there we go. Clevis pin's the only other thing I've got to do. So with the Clevis pin, I've already drilled out the where is the Clevis pin? It's not going to be far. It's over there. Already drilled out the remains of the split pin. So it's just a case now of tidying that up. Then we can go through a derust. There we go. Right, and then that wants to go in there, ideally. It does. It does. Well, I was thinking about it anyway. It comes. Come on, you bastard. Oh, there we are. It's off. What I might do here, I don't think it's that that's rotting. I think it's the inside of here. That's better. There we are. Much better. Right. Done that. And let's find some big nuts and big washers. Anyone in it? I'm not sure what size washers we need. These chappies, these are that chappy there. I don't know what the fuck that is. That's sticky. These chappies here are head bolt washers. As you know, they're 7/16, so the nut goes on. I'll put split washers underneath it. If I can't find nylocks, I'll put split washers underneath. Right, that's that. Let's go and have a cup of tea and de-rust, I think. Right, all looking good, looking good, looking good, ready. Rust. This stuff is nasty in that it stains your fingers, so I tend to put gloves on. I know, but at least this shit washes off. And I have got my handy, trusty brush, and I'm using, in this case, Ep25, which is a converter. More or less out of this, and get some more. And it's just a case of brushing it on thin, don't put it on too thick, and it goes blue as it starts to work, and really it sort of goes a dark blue black when it's finished. Just everything falling on the floor. Oh, we've got the file. On and just struggling to get it down beside that captive nut there, but never mind, it will do the job. The paint I'm using neutralises rust as well, so this is a bit of a belt and braces kind of thing to be doing really, but there's nothing wrong with belt and braces, or chips and rice, whatever you want to call it, I don't know. On the pin, when it goes back in, I'll make sure it's lubed up. And these things have lasted in a very hostile environment for a very long time, and as you see, they've come apart. A little bit of heat and some percussive maintenance, and yeah, they came apart. Beautiful. Just, and let's see, all the crap that ends up on my fingers. Boing. Right, I'm going to go and have a cup of tea.